Unlike old traditional methods where you grow out in the open fields, we're in a controlled environment. Matter of fact, when you stepped in a solution, and basically what we're doing here is, if you look above us on the roof, we have visqueen that actually has a purpose. Not only does it protect us from rain droplets or dew and humidity, it also eliminates 27% of the ultraviolet rays. And this cheesecloth that you see around us basically is an anti-insecticide protectant and sprayed down so no insects would come in, because understand, these tobaccos are sweet and they can smell the sugar, but growing tobacco in a controlled environment is going to keep it clean and devoid of any mold, spores, and viruses. So what we do is, once we bring these seed trays in here for germination, the first thing we're going to do in this controlled environment is we have these high-speed the high-speed microprocessing sprinkler heads that are going to basically produce a blast of humidity, and it's going to be like a cloud bank. And the reason we do that is so none of those seeds pop out of the ground. And the second thing we're going to do is we're going to water these plants depending on the conditions of the actual tobacco plant, but upwards to 4 times a day at 15-minute intervals. And when this cloud bank comes down, I literally couldn't see you where you're standing at. And what it does is it produces moisture, and at the same time we can add foliage agents, organic algicides, and fungicides to keep the tobacco plant whole and non-susceptible to any molds, viruses, or spores, so it can grow healthy. And what's great is, because we have these controlled environments and grounds, and really fertile grounds that have all the fertilization that we need, for the first 10 days during that germination period, we don't need to apply any fertilizers, just foliage agents and water, because the grounds are loaded with fertilization. So after 10 days, we observe the plant, and we can also see through these sprinkler heads how we can put fertilization fluidly over the top, and we can actually fertilize the plants from over the top, and they drain into the ground. And the time between germination, which is 8 and 10 days, to the time these tobacco plants can be set out into the farms is approximately 45 to 48 days, where they're going to be transplanted out into our fields. But they're going to be sound, they're going to be lush, and they're going to be protected. And when we put them in the fields, guess what? We have 0 stress level. Matter of fact, on our factory tours, we bring people out to the farms normally around 11 o'clock in high noon, where the sun is up at its most intense position. And the reason we do that is we want to show how healthy our tobacco plants are, and all the tips are actually fighting for the sun, where normally in a field you would see them wilt, because we've done everything to protect this plant so it literally has no stress even in the open fields. And what happens, it grows much healthier, more vibrant, and thicker at the same time. And these plants, after 45 to 40 days, are asking to be put out in these farms because they're vibrant. The tiles or the stems are nice and thick. They're loaded with nutrients. And if you look at the leaves on top, they're a nice lush green, and they're going to be ready to be transplanted in the field stress-free. So what we do is, just because these plants are beautiful, we just don't take them out of the farms. We actually hand select them, and we take each one out of a tray, and we look for a couple things. We look for the size of the plant to be an adequate size, which is approximately 3.5 inches. We want to look at the foliage or the actual leaves to make sure they're nice and dark green and healthy. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the stalk and make sure it's nice and almost like a lime color green, and it's very healthy. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the radical root structure to make sure it's whole. After that, we'll hand select them and put 96 of those perfect plants that are all uniform in a tray, and then we'll take them out to the fields. Anything that doesn't pass muster, we'll give it an antibiotic, we'll check it out, and we'll observe it for the next 3 days. If it doesn't work, we discard the plant. Our average death rate is 0.7%, which is about the best you could possibly ever have. If anybody tells you they get 100%, it's definitely not true. It's impossible. But we're really happy with what we're doing here, and all these steps are very important. And to me, it just makes total sense to do things right from the beginning to the end. And I think our consumers more than deserve that. And what we're trying to do with those plants that didn't make the grade at first is we're going to try to give them some tender love and care to see if we can get them growing to these right dimensions and all the checks that I just previously talked to you about. And then we're going to make a determination if they're going to make the grade or not. And most do, thank God. But it's important to hand select these plants and make sure you do everything right before they go out in the fields. And one of the things we want to do is, on each and every one of our farms, we have our own greenhouses actually on the farms. And the reason we do that is we don't want them to have any stress. We don't want to have to put a bunch of germinated tobacco plants in the back of a truck and drive it 10 miles through heat and stress. So what we do is we take those trays and we actually walk them right out into our fields. And most of the time they're literally within a quarter of a block or literally a 5-minute walk. So those plants don't go through any stress. And once they go into the planter, they're going to be planted. And these planters that we have will actually plant 240 tobacco plants every 60 seconds. Not only open the earth, but actually water it and actually put the tobacco in and seal the dirt 240 times a minute. And what we do is we have less manipulation of hands. We don't have people actually touching those plants. They're actually done in rows with a machine and stainless steel, and everything remains nice and clean. And because we grow so much tobacco, we know what our capacity is, and we actually grow the tobacco in succession. So everything grows uniformly, and then what happens is when the tobacco goes into the curing barns, as soon as they cure perfectly, the next step comes in and the next set of tobacco plants come in. And what we do is we get not only a much more uniform process, but the process works much better. And what we have is we have better tobacco at the end of the cycle. And if you look, you can see how healthy these tobacco plants are. You can look at the foliage and how nice and green everything is. And you can look at the radical root structure, and everything we did worked. It's right. So it's very important to us. It's a big difference having 2,800, 3,000 roots versus only having 4 that have been ripped off and are going to suffer from the beginning. And at the end, it's going to be great for our consumers and for the manufacturing facility of Perdomo Cigars. We're really proud that we do this the right way. Obviously, doing it this way, it's going to be a stress-free plant. And the same thing, as you see, none of the roots were torn off because it comes right out of the deposit cleanly. 2 things happen when we do what we do. First of all, it's beautiful to see how green and nice these leaves are going to be for future cigars. But just as important to us is what's underneath the plant right here with the root base. Not only is it going to suffer less stress, we're going to get more bountiful tobacco, more weight, and more rich tobacco, which in turn is going to produce a much finer Perdomo cigar. And it's a win-win for the company, like I said earlier. It's excellent. So this is the seed bed aspect. And now we're going to go out to the farms and show you what happens, how we transplant the tobacco in our fields.